Get 6 months of local news for just $2. You get unlimited access to the news and information you need to stay connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to get 6 months of local news for just $2.
You're listening to Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. I'm your host, Rob Port. If I sound distracted, it's because I've been busy covering this story all morning. I'm joined by my co-host, Chad Oban.
He's right of center, I'm left of center, both sides of the political spectrum.
I think it's cathartic. I think it's a necessary and proper debate. I'm glad we're having it.
And honestly, we have to do better.
Okay, I don't know why I'm getting blamed for this, right? Welcome to Plain Talk, where we like to use AI all the time, and we've talked about AI a lot. I use AI in my work. I have some issues with like generative AI. I think people generating things and then claiming that as their own work, I have some issues with. But in terms of like analyzing data, summarizing things, helping me find things quickly, it's really been great. I've mentioned a lot too on the audio of this. Afterwards, I always write an article about each episode, and I use AI, like I plug the audio in and I have it help me pull quotes out and things like that. Like it transcribes it for me. It's very, very quickly. Also here in North Dakota, we're having a debate. We're kind of, as North Dakota often is, we are kind of where the rubber is meeting the road right now on some of this. We have data centers that want to build here because we have really cheap electricity. We also have really cold weather a lot of the year, which is beneficial to them. And I think one of the questions, though, as we're watching all this happening, and it's impacting North Dakotans are using AI. We're having debates about what's the proper use of this in an academic setting, in a creative setting. Also, what are the impacts going to be of data centers being built? Another thing that people are worried about, particularly as we watch national headlines about layoffs at Amazon and some of these giant companies where they're just tens of thousands of workers losing their jobs explicitly because AI can do a lot of those jobs now, or at least make those jobs so efficient they don't need as much manpower. And so there's a legitimate question about how AI is going to impact our economy. And Chad, it's actually a very old debate. Do you know where the term Luddite comes from?
I don't, Rob. Thanks for putting me on the spot to start the show.
Well,
you don't even mention that I'm here, and then you give me a gotcha question, huh?
Yeah, that's right. That's how we're starting out today. And I'm also going to dunk on you a little bit because you should know, because the Luddites were a labor movement, and you should know all about the history of the labor movement. They were early in the Industrial Revolution. Luddites were followers of a figure. I don't know. I think he may be ahistorical. I don't know. His name was Ned Ludd. He may have been like a kind of a folk hero, like a John Henry type. But supposedly he broke into a factory and broke a spinning jenny. And so the Luddites were people who were anti-technology because they thought the industrialization and all these new steam-powered, mechanized machines that were doing manufacturing, and people were going to lose their jobs. It was going to take fewer people to make more things. Now, obviously, we've been living with those things for a long time. It wasn't quite the catastrophe that the Luddites made it out to be, but that reaction to new technology is still very much with us. Here to talk to us about it is Revana Sharfuddin. She is a research fellow at the Labor Policy Project at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University. She was also a speaker at North Dakota State University just recently. Revana, welcome to the show. Thank you for being on.
Rob, thanks for having me.
Did I summarize this? Because it really does. This is not a new debate. I mean, we're talking about AI data centers. Now, I remember Barack Obama talking about ATMs putting bank tellers out of business. And, every new wave of technology, this happens. I think maybe the difference now is the waves are coming a lot faster, a lot more frequently. But tell us a little bit about AI's impact. Are we all going to lose our jobs? Am I going to lose my job as a podcaster and a reporter because of AI?
You touched on many really good points. I really like the example of the ATM you brought up. So David Otter, who's a key labor economist in the U.S., studying U.S. labor market, he actually talks about the example of ATM, that when ATM started, spreading, obviously bank tellers lost jobs, but because of availability of ATM, we actually had more banks. We had more of the locations than before. So what ended up happening, yes, we had reduced maybe the bank teller jobs, but we had more of the relationship building banker jobs. And he backs this up with data in his paper. And perhaps it will be helpful to link those papers in the comment in the description. I'm happy to share those. And it's a fascinating example of how technology shifts different kind of job and actually adds a premium to human-centric jobs. So with the bank teller example, we do see that the type of job that has changed after ATM became widespread are different kinds of jobs. Those are relationship banker jobs where you're talking about advising about mortgages, advising about finances, student loan. So from purely just handing out cash to your customer, that job shifted to more relationship, more soft skill, more tacit knowledge type job, which is fundamentally how technology shifts our work. And there is potential and kind of almost like an optimistic outlook towards it, is that perhaps our jobs are going to be shifted to higher order tasks, and where we have soft skill, we can kind of flourish more and gain more productivity. And the ATM example is actually just the perfect example of how in previous technology actually elevated the status of human jobs and increased different types of job and reduced the older jobs. And talking about would we all lose our job? Rob, I think your job is really, really safe because you're doing something that AI cannot do. It's just bringing people together, talking and making those connections. And I think those are the jobs that are going to really stay. I talked to somebody, actually a colleague of mine, who does all of this relationship building work, and he talks to like different researcher, policymaker, and brings everybody together. And I said, your job is never going to go away because you do this really human-centric work. But also the headline numbers are scary. And if we kind of say, well, it's another technology shock, just move along with the new world, don't worry about it. I think we will be making a little bit of mistake. Even if we are champions of innovation, we really like technology, we have to address these fears. What we have seen in past tech shocks or other types of shocks to the US economy, China shock or productivity shock, internet shock, I think some of like champions of free market, we tried to say on average we were better off. We say in economics term, we say general equilibrium, we were all better off. But then we know certain industries, certain jobs, they were worse off. They did lose their jobs, and then they felt like their personal experience didn't match these headlines, and there were obviously all these frustrations. So I think we can do yes, sorry.
I just want to point out for the people at home that Chad, when you said that my job was safe, rolled his eyes.
Well, I'm just, yeah. Well, I it was a joke, I guess. He can put my thoughts in the chat GPT. So I want to say, first of all, on the bank piece, banks in Bismarck, North Dakota are doing great. Every time there's a new building being built, it's a bank. You drive around Bismarck right now, the banks are doing just fine. So any suggestion the ATM was going to put them out of business, I don't need to see an academic paper. I can just drive around Bismarck to see they're doing just fine. I got to tell you, I was a little excited for this interview today. Some of the ways I use Chat GPT is to train a baseball road trip, some work stuff. It makes my life a lot easier. And then I pulled up your policy paper. I've got it printed out here.
Oh, wonderful.
And I started to read it, and I started seeing tax code reference like a bunch of times, and I instantly glossed over because it's some really dense sort of in the weeds stuff. So what I'm going to ask you is, I suppose we could have put it into Chat GPT and had it explain it to me, but instead, can you explain this paper and what tax code means in terms of protecting workforce, making sure we're investing in the right things? Because I think the point here is a really interesting one. It's just in 10 pages. Can you sort of dumb it down for me and the listeners who maybe aren't in the weeds on this one?
Well, I appreciate you reading the paper. It's a new paper I released a few weeks ago. I've been thinking about this idea since last fall and then this spring that, okay, I think even as a kind of free market centric economist, how can we think about proactive solution to potential displacement? So even if we all all on average become better off after this tech shock. We become richer as a nation. But if some people are left behind and they're frustrated and they feel like their stories are not being seen, so how can we address it without big distortionary effect? Because a lot of people try to support that we send cash, we give tax credit, but we know that giving tax credit, that is distortionary because it's government picking winners and losers, and we want the competitive forces of the market to decide which businesses should thrive. And so in the spirit of tax neutrality and less distortionary effect, I tried to see what are the tax expensing provision, because in ideal world, you should not be taxing the investment. You should be taxing the return to the investment. So we see that in our tax code, especially after One Big Beautiful Bill, when you have a capital equipment, research and development investment, machine, software, computers, when a business, small or big, invest in this equipment, they can write off the cost of that purchase immediately and 100%. So if I buy as a business a computer this year, I can, when I'm reporting my taxes, I can write it off immediately. Previously, it used to be in a depreciation schedule. You could kind of get the expensing over many years, but now we have a very pro-growth capital tax expensing provision. But it does not match the labor expensive provision is not the same way. What we mean by that is that when we invest in human capital, meaning we train our workers, that cost the businesses can't immediately write off the same way they can for AI taxes. So AI expenses. So that's kind of the piece about it. So there is an incentive problem for businesses to invest in their workers. And we know that right now it's very, very important that we train people, we train ourselves, we also have individual actions, but there are 6 distortionary ways that the government is preventing businesses to invest in their workers. So I think that would probably be a helpful time to pull up the paper where there's table 1 where I talk about all of the barriers the government places. For example, if you were if you were training your worker for a future role, not for a job today, for example, if I have a research intern at Mercatus Center and I want this research intern to do better and I want him or her to be a research fellow next year. So I want him or her to be trained for a certain research AI tool, but I cannot train them for a future role in the current tax provision. But the thing is, all of the job roles are going to be changing with the new technology. So that's government putting serious barrier for us to invest in workers, invest in young workers, young grads. We see all this news about how the young grads are really suffering. And similarly, this is the 5% owner cap provision. That is really damaging because that is technically locking out all of our small businesses, which is, we have, let me see the number, 84% of American businesses are actually small businesses, which is 29.8 million enterprises. And if an individual owns more than 5% of their businesses, they're not able to expense their own training costs. Also, if this is a mom and pop shop and you're sending your daughter to learn an AI tool so you can make maybe some graphic materials for marketing materials, you cannot expense your daughter's training because there is a 5% owner cap. And then there is educational assistant program barrier, which is set at $5,000 something, which was set, I think, in the 1980s and didn't adjust for inflation. So we have all these barriers that we're putting for businesses where they're not able to train their workers. If we can maybe go to the flow chart of this paper a little bit, you can see all of the mazes of regulations and restriction a small business will have to get through to be able to expense their worker training. And most small businesses just simply don't have that HR capacity to go through all of that. So
I want to sum some of that up because that's really interesting. But essentially, I mean, in a nutshell, AI is creating a situation where Americans can do their job differently. Maybe certain tasks aren't as labor intensive, so they don't employ as many people. Currently, our tax code has a lot of incentives, depreciation scale, whatnot, when you invest in equipment, or which you could say software, something like AI is. We don't necessarily have the same thing. And in some ways, I think what you just described, we have flat out barriers to investing in helping these workers adapt, maybe train for different jobs, learn new skills. There are barriers for that. So you're saying one way to react to the AI, to the extent that AI is challenging and is putting some workers out of work, make it easier through the tax code for businesses to retain those workers or to train them or to shuffle the labor force around to accept AI, right? I mean, because the idea, so I hear some people saying, well, we ought to just stop AI, we ought to block it. That's not happening. The toothpaste is out of the tube. So, that's not happening. So the thing is how do we leave ourselves able to invest? This really makes a lot of sense to me. The idea of let's make it easier for businesses to invest in their people. We already make it easy for them to invest in their equipment, the non-animate stuff. Why not allow them to invest in people?
Absolutely. And it puts the power back on the hands of businesses because they know where they need the training the most. A lot of people propose we have federal workforce training programs, but Washington doesn't have the idea of where the North Dakota needs are. And same ways of businesses will know where it matches better with local labor market condition, and it's tax expensing and not a tax credit, which is not distortionary because government is not picking certain industry. It's not saying that only when you invest in AI. It's saying anytime you train your worker, pretty much you are able to expense those costs.
So this conversation is interesting because I'm old enough to remember when we started to talk about the transition from fossil fuels to green energy, and folks in the fossil fuel industry in North Dakota, many of the union workers, like, I don't want to learn new skills. I'm a coal worker, right? I'm a coal miner. I'm all these different things. And a lot of people on the conservative side said, yeah, we don't want people to have to transition to learn these new skills. And I think about, I was just in Arizona, and there's those Wago cars everywhere down there, self-automated cars driving everywhere, which is putting taxi cab drivers and those kind of people out of business. I mean, isn't part of the issue that I agree the toothpaste is out of the tube, but I mean, at some point when you start talking about older workers and we need people to continue to be in the workforce, aren't we going to see some pushback no matter what the tax structure looks like of older workers saying, I'm 50. I want to keep doing the work that I've always done. We can't just say, tough, this is the way we're doing it, and put these guys out of work. Like, how do you handle that? Because I do think that's really, the human element here is very, very complicated, I think, in terms of getting everybody to buy in to this new world.
I mean, my answer to that will sound cheesy and not very empirically backed. I think for that, we need to do what we are doing right now. We need to talk to each other. We need to talk to public. We need to write op-eds. We need to go on podcasts, go on universities, meet communities, and talk about these things openly, that it's actually not that scary. And to be honest, one of the best things about AI that we see also in data, we have, for example, Claude, the company that makes Claude, Anthropic, they have this thing called Anthropic Economic Index, and we see where people use AI the most. And one of the things that really sticks out is that people use AI to teach themselves a lot of the things. And so I think if we just communicate that with people, like, hey, a lot of the things that are on your way, you can teach yourself in your own time, asynchronously. You don't have to go to a night class. You don't have to take your hours away from, childcare, elderly care. You can do it in your own time using AI. So I think some of that needs to be kind of a cultural shift, conversations rather than a policy, because, what can you really do? We can't do anything with policy to address those anxiety. We have to do a lot of public education conversation and things like that. But in terms of pushbacks, I mean, even if AI doesn't have any distortionary effect, let's say, people are still going to be hesitant towards this new thing. I know even in our organization, we moved from Google Drive to Box, which is, cloud platform. And we all were just annoyed that we have to use this new tool. So there is very human to have some pushback against a new tech.
It's hard, and it's getting harder because, again, the waves of new technology are coming faster. But I mean, North Dakota's lived this story. One of the reasons why we went from, when you talk about the Bonanza Farm era, into, sort of the 1980s, where our population was declining and getting older, was because farming mechanized. And it was starting with the McCormick reaper, threshing machines, combines. Farming became less labor intensive. And by that, I mean, farming is still hard to do. It just took fewer people to farm the same number of acres and to get the same yield. And it's hard. I mean, I don't know what you say to those farmers. Like, if you're 50 years old and all you've ever been is a farmhand, and now there's not a farmhand job anymore, I think it's really hard and I don't know what the answer is. Although I also think that's not an argument against what you're talking about. It's just, this isn't the silver bullet. This is a thing that we can do to say, let's make it easier for our businesses to be more flexible and to do some of these things and break down some of these barriers. But on the other hand, I think it's just hard. Let me ask you one thing, because we're very focused on North Dakota. What can states do? Like, as North Dakota businesses are seeing AI come in, and maybe it's displacing North Dakota jobs, what can we do as a state, our state legislature, our executive branch? What can they do to accomplish some of the things you're talking about and leave our state economy nimble enough to handle this? Not just this technology upheaval, but probably others, because it ain't going to stop.
I mean, that is a very good point. I think some of the things that community members are able to do is talk to state legislators and talk about, the policy solutions I have, they're clearly federal. That needs to happen we need our IRS tax codes to be changed. But we have seen previously many policies changed at federal level from kind of the waves and pushes coming from state level. So talking to state legislators, and then state legislators bringing it to Washington during their trips, or when they're having this conversation, or kind of formal requests for these things to change. And we see, if we start seeing those enough coming from different states, I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic that we can get this done federally. And especially the current administration has a lot of openness towards pro-growth track tax policy, because we have seen in one big beautiful bill that they have done it for capital expensing provision, which was kind of I know that DC kind of fiscal policy people really tried to have that accomplished for decades, and it was done this year. So there is a lot of openness in the administration for pro-growth policy, and I think if we have those messaging letters to our congressmen and things like that, we can definitely see that happen. And in terms of businesses, I think I don't know how different level of diffusion is happening at different state level. We still need to study it. I think that's the problem we're seeing with the headline figures and actual diffusion rate, because we don't have proper data on how businesses are implementing AI versus they're just keeping their old fashioned. I think the biggest shift we will see, and if we are worried about job displacement severely, that will be the big companies first. So for the small businesses to stay competitive will just be, to adopt this technology and learn how to make it work for yourself. And then another point I'd like to make is to just thinking about more entrepreneurship and creating businesses rather than looking for those kind of entry-level white-collar jobs, because that's something people are talking a lot about in the news. But we also have a lot of businesses that need to change hand. A lot of the baby boomers who want to kind of transfer their businesses to the next generation oftentimes don't have a succession plan to think about. Instead of student loan, how do we think about small business loan? How do we become more entrepreneurial? Because businesses, bringing people together, coordinating with people, those are kind of AI-proof jobs. So I think those are kind of where the shifts will need to happen in case of a really catastrophic effect. But I don't think we're there yet.
So I get a little nervous when I hear pro-growth administration, when I hear the big, beautiful bill. I think the big, beautiful bill in this administration often quite frankly, academia often forgets about the effects of one human being living in Bismarck, North Dakota, because we're just looking up here. I mean, what you just talked about sounds really good, but it still doesn't seem like we have a good answer to that guy's working in a job who's getting displaced. I mean, the idea of just, hey, go teach yourself to do other things on AI seems like a little bit out of touch. How do we connect those dots between academia and what's really happening on the streets in places like North Dakota, where people might not have a job?
Chad's analogy about the coal workers, being told, the infamous thing that was told to them was learn to code, and which is not, I mean, not very helpful advice to somebody
And I
who's
feel
been
like the
mining coal their
politics
whole
have
life.
flipped a little bit, right? It was
They have.
Democrats who were telling the coal miner to
Right.
find a new job, and now it's people on the right who are saying, let the free market figure it out and, teach yourself new skills and then go find a new job in Hebron, North Dakota. I mean, that's not the way this works, right? So how do you connect these dots between the academic and what's really happening here in the state?
That is a very good point. Thanks for humbling me that we're not able to think about those individual stories. I think academic research can probably not do a lot in terms of talking to these people on the ground, because they are oftentimes, as you said, aggregated economy perspective. But there are papers that are done at state level and looking at specific industries. So maybe one way could be to connect. What you guys are clearly doing is that connecting with research institutions and universities locally, and think about these local labor market issues together and think about the solutions. But I think what you're pointing at is a lot about communication and messaging and things like that. And obviously, it's quite tone deaf to go to a farmer or a coal miner person who had, work. A lot of the time is our identity. It's part of our status, who we are in our community. So it's kind of tone deaf to go tell them learn to code. That is not going to work. But I think with AI, we know that those are not the jobs that are going to likely be affected. I think the main job, the knowledge economy, is where we're seeing the effects going to happen. So maybe one thing would be to reassure some of these folks that probably this is not something you need to so much worry about to begin with, given the industry. And secondly, I do see a different future for some of the manufacturing and agriculture work. And maybe this is too optimistic. Maybe this is a little too futurist. So please call me out if I'm going that direction. But I see this future of kind of human AI collaboration in more of the manual jobs, more of the jobs where you need movement, you need to you don't sit. A lot of people say high skill job, low skill job. I don't like it, because so many of the manual job, I would not know how to do any of it. They're very difficult.
I'm with you. I'm with
Uh,
you.
So I maybe they're somebody else. I'm borrowing somebody else's vocabulary for this. They said computer jobs. So I think most of the jobs that are going to be affected are going to be the computer jobs. And if for the manual, but even still very technical and hard jobs, there could be a human AI collaboration. There are all these VR goggles now, or you have AI incorporated in your eyeglasses. So I imagine a farmer going in the field, or maybe he has a greenhouse and he's looking at the leaves, and the leaves colors are looking kind of weird, but your glasses are analyzing it, sending it to the cloud, and immediately telling you the solutions for
What's
that.
going
So,
on?
so there is
Yeah.
a beautiful, or if you're doing welding job, plumbing job, and you on the spot, you're not sure this funky thing that is happening to a sink. I'm sorry, I don't know a lot about how plumbing works. But then it takes the data and then sends it to a centralized cloud. And I don't have the names pulled out, but there are companies that are, I think, working with open source AI, and they're creating these tools for empowering kind of more manual but still high skill jobs. So those are kind of my AI future for that. But for medium term, I think these sectors are going to be quite unaffected. I think the thing where we have to worry about are knowledge work or laptop jobs, and kind of the entry level part of it.
Revana, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's Revana Sharfuddin. She was, again, a fellow at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University, recently a speaker in the Menard Family Distinguished Speaker Series at the Challey Institute at North Dakota State University. Thanks for listening. We'll be right back. Hey, Plain Talk listeners, have something to say? Call or text Plain Talk with your questions, comments, or headlines you want us to cover.
Just dial 701-587-3141. Leave us your message or shoot us a text with your name and location, and you could be featured on an upcoming show.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and I am in Jamestown.
Hey, Rob and Chad. My name's Tony. I live in Grand Forks.
That's 701-587-3141.
Call us, text us, vent, praise.
We want you in the conversation. Thanks for being part of the show.
Now let's get back to today's episode.
All right, welcome back. We just got done with Revana Sharfuddin. Great information. And I think you made such valid points about the whole, learned to code. I mean, that was a tone deaf thing that I think green energy advocates, pulled off there. And I think AI, and I don't want to say Revana was doing that at all. She was not, her package of policies that she's talking about, she's not selling that as a silver bullet that's going to solve this problem. I think it's good in that I think that's the right approach. Like, how can we make ourselves more flexible to handle, for businesses to handle, these technological advancements. But on the other hand, there is something, and I don't know what the solution is, Chad. I don't know what you tell a 55-year-old cab driver what to do with their lives if an automated car takes their job. I don't know what to say to that person.
Right. I mean, a couple things. One, I mean, she's an academic, right? I mean, so it wasn't her job to sort of answer the how do you sell it. She's saying this is the right policy based on academic research. So
policy for part of the problem too.
Right,
She's not
right,
saying
right. And not saying she
this
can
is
solve
the silver bullet. She's saying here's some ideas.
right. And but it does to me, again, it just reeked of a disconnect between policy and the human beings that are part of this. And I think the other thing at play here is AI is so broad. And so when people hear AI, one side it's I'm going to plug something into ChatGPT and get a road trip to go on a baseball trip, right? The other thing is, oh my God, are robots going to take over the universe, right? I mean, there's it's just so wide. And so
it's everything from find me a recipe for the ingredients that I have in my fridge to the Terminator and Skynet, right? Like,
and I think you brought up a good point. It's also moving so fast. Like, everything is moving so fast. So you talk about that worker living in a small town in North Dakota. I don't know how you convince them to that it's all going to be okay, right? It's not going to affect you, whatever. I just think it's so complicated. Do I think we should maybe change the tax code to invest more in people and less in stuff? I can get behind that. But I just think there's a big sales job to be done. And also, I just saw a post on Facebook today, somebody complaining about there not being enough tills open at their local Menards because everything is now self-checkout, right? I mean, so it's complicated.
Yeah, it really is. What's funny is we actually, right near my house, we had a convenience store that had gone to where you just go in and you just put stuff in a bag and then just walk out. Like,
really?
When I would go in, like, I tap my phone and it records my payment, and then I walk through the little turnstile, grab a bag, fill it with whatever corn nuts and sodas or whatever I'm buying, and then I just walked out. And then it would just
little old Minot.
charge me as I left. They took all that out.
People
And
hated it.
I'm not sure why they did, but a part of me wonders if maybe it's not working as well as they wanted it to. And so the last time I went in there, I had a good old Cenex checker checking me out. So I don't know. I mean, the thing is, when I brought up the Luddite movement, and I think the argument there is it's not new. I think what's new is it's happening faster. The cycle of it is happening faster. But for as long as humans have been around, I mean, there was probably somebody complaining about the invention of the wheel, putting sledge pullers out of business or something like that. I mean, it's been with us forever. I think the right approach is not to sell people on it. Like, tell them you should be worried. You need to be thinking about learning new skills and being nimble in this economy. That's just the reality of the world now. And maybe that sounds cold, but I don't know what else. I don't think telling them, "Oh, you're safe, everything's going to be okay." I mean, that's a fantasy. That's not true. The truth is, you need to expect that your job that you take when you're 20 may be a very, very different, your career may be very, very different by the time you get to the end of your working life. And we have to be prepared for that.
So before we get into the topic we want to discuss, I do want to point out the fact that, at the beginning of the show, you gave me a gotcha question on not knowing my history of unionism well enough. While I was gone, Pat Finken came out for Medicare for all, which is left of where I am on health insurance. What the hell is going on with Plain Talk when I'm not around here to sort of even things out?
It's I think what you're seeing is a political realignment. I mean, I think that's going to be the legacy. I think the legacy of the Trump era is not going to be any particular policy achievement, because I think most, to the degree that Trump has accomplished anything, it's mostly ephemeral. I don't know that we're going to see anything lasting. I think the lasting impact is going to be a political realignment where, a lot of the pro-business people, I think, will have sort of left the Republican Party, and I think a lot of sort of the populist people will have left the Democratic Party. And I think that's happening in front of us right now.
It's fascinating, though. I mean, maybe the far right has been correct for the last decade or so when they've called Finken a rhino, that maybe all along he was a leftist, and you had to bring him on to be the lefty on this show.
You think so?
No,
I'm sure that
think
Pat,
so. I
I'm sure
don't
that
think
when
so.
Pat listens to this, I'm sure he's going to enjoy being called a lefty. I
By
don't know that
somebody who's left of center.
I mean, his argument for it was essentially, he made a pro-business argument for it. Look what it's doing. I mean, obviously, look what it's doing to individual Americans, but look what it's doing to businesses too. It's a killer. And I'm at the point where I don't want it. I think we're heading there, whether we like it or not. And there's a part of me that says maybe we should just do it, because do it so that we have some control on it, and we can do it intentionally, instead of having us, reach a point of emergency and then have to nationalize the whole system to keep things afloat.
Businesses are experiencing a year over year of a 10 to 15 to 20% increase in health insurance. That is not sustainable for businesses.
No.
Wages will go down, profit margins will go down. I think Pat brings up a good point. Businesses and individuals can't continue this. And I just talked to somebody the other day whose rates on the exchange have gone up $600 a month. It's a bronze plan, and their deductible is $25,000. So they're paying $25,000 a year in premium plus $25,000 in deductible. That person's not going to get health insurance.
Well, that person's probably not seeking a lot of health care either with their deductible that high. I mean, they're only going to go when there's emergencies. They're not going to do the sort of, regular checkups and stuff that we should all be doing, that I have been trying to do a better job with, because my typical American dumb old male thinking, that
not just American, Midwestern, even worse.
Yeah, I know. I did something to my shoulder. I was helping out at a breast cancer fundraiser where we make I posted about it on all those fancy ass Bloody Marys that we do. I did something when we were cleaning up. I was carrying a bunch of heavy stuff. I did something to my shoulder, and it's still bad. Like, I can't lift things above my shoulder level.
Throwing arm too? I mean,
yeah. Oh yeah. The Yankees aren't going to be able to call me up to pitch out of the bullpen anytime soon. And the thing is, like, I should go to the doctor for that. But I don't wanna. Like, I'm instead I'm gonna moan every time I have to adjust the pillow behind my head or something. That's how I'm gonna deal with this. And it's idiot, stupid. I'm not endorsing this. But this is the way it is.
And so common.
Well, now that we've gotten by your shock and awe at Pat Finken outing himself as a communist. And I'm saying that because I'm looking forward to the text that I'm going to get from Pat after I said that.
I think it'll be more telling when you don't get the text, and we'll know that he only listens when he's hosting.
Let's talk about the Epstein votes in Congress. You felt, and I want to say, because I had a column out as we're recording this on Wednesday, November 19th, and the problem with that column is I wrote it for a print deadline before. I mean, things changed very rapidly on that vote. I did give Julie Fedorchak some credit, because at the time she came out and said she was going to vote for the release of the Epstein files, the president was still trying to arm wrestle people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and Representative Nancy Mace and others into not voting for the release. So I did think that there was some courage in that she did come out before the president. I also think Democrats, the Democratic MPL, they put out a statement saying that, criticizing Fedorchak because she could have done this a long time ago. That discharge petition is what the piece of legislation's called. And it was sort of languishing for want of like one more signature or two more signatures or something like that. She could have indicated that she would have signed it a while ago and moved this forward. It didn't have to wait this long. And I think that's a valid criticism as well. As usual, taking a very nuanced position here on Plain Talk.
Yeah, so here's what I would say. I think the Dem statement probably was a little too aggressive. I think using words like coward and whatever, that's their job. I don't love it, right? But I will say I didn't see any profiles in courage here with Fedorchak jumping on this train that was already moving. I mean, to put a finer point on this, she could have signed on the discharge papers. Mike Johnson had said he wasn't going to bring up a vote. Hell, he sent them out of Washington for a month.
Well, he also delayed seating a Democratic congresswoman out of Arizona who had won a special election and delayed seating her for, what was it, 60 days, 70 days,
Yeah,
something like
and
that.
she was vote number 218 on the discharge paper. So
Right.
I mean, so she could have certainly done stuff before that. I also think all the emails that came from the Epstein estate came out. And so there's already like this big trough of emails that came out, and then she signed on, right? And then she said she'd vote for it. And then it ends up being a vote where only one person voted against it in all of Congress. I don't think it's very impressive to, as I said to you in a text earlier, congrats, you stopped helping cover up for pedophiles, right? I mean, I'm glad she got to where she did. I think all this should come out. I've never understood the politics between Johnson and people trying to cover up for pedophiles, no matter if it's Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Summers, whoever else.
Larry Summers, yeah.
Yeah, I've never understood.
There was a Democratic congresswoman. No, she's a non-voting member because she's from
Virgin Islands.
The Virgin Islands, right. And actually, I mean, I guess Epstein was her constituent. But, you know, part of what came out in that tranche of emails listed was her having very friendly, very, intimate's the wrong word because it connotates something that wasn't there.
Friendly.
Certainly very friendly emails. And it almost seemed like he was telling her what to, you know, what questions to ask during a congressional hearing. And this was well after he had been convicted, had to register as a sex offender. I mean, this was very, very late in Epstein's, you know, sort of trajectory of being an awful person. And here she is having, you know, Larry Summers, you know, a member of the royal family, Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton. I mean, a lot of these people implicated in ugly, ugly ways. And I don't know what other position there is other than to be in favor of releasing this. And they keep saying, like, I saw Senator Kramer's statement was like, you know, I've always been for transparency and the Democrats should have released this, whatever. Maybe the Democrats should have released it during the Biden administration. Although I will say, Maxwell was still being prosecuted during the Biden administration. Her appeals, the final appeal all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court wasn't completed until October of this year. So I don't know what could have been released. I didn't want to release anything that's going to jeopardize holding somebody accountable in a court of law. But I will tell you one thing I'm very afraid of right now, Chad. What I'm afraid is going to happen, and I have this fear all the time as somebody who requests a lot of open records, is what if the custodian of the records is a dishonest person? And I'm worried about that because when you look at the Trump administration, the way he has politicized the Department of Justice, he has politicized the FBI, he has just loyalists and yes men, although the Attorney General is a woman, Pam Bondi, has them in these positions. Can they be trusted to faithfully report information that might be embarrassing to their boss? I don't think they can be. And what I'm afraid of the upshot of all this is going to be is there's all this fear about releasing the Epstein files. I'm afraid they're going to be released, and either we're not going to get everything or they're going to be so heavily redacted. And then the narrative is going to be, see, there was nothing all along. It was all a big nothing. It was all just another hoax perpetrated on poor Donald Trump.
Right.
And the thing is, one last thing, I think we got to be very, very careful because the revelations that we already know about Donald Trump's interactions with Jeffrey Epstein, the birthday card, you know, the sort of wink, wink and a nod statements, Donald Trump's overall attitude towards women in general. He just called a female reporter, quote, piggy this week. What else needs to be in the Epstein files before you conclude that this guy is a disgusting human being?
So there's a lot there, Rob, that you just went through that I want to respond to. One, the congresswoman from the Virgin Islands, or the delegate or whatever she is, should have been censured. Democrats should have censured her. Her being friendly with Jeffrey Epstein sort of reminds me of like the people who were still having dinner with Ray Holmberg after he had, like, it never made sense to me. Like, why would you associate with somebody who's done this stuff? My fear in terms of what gets released, I do think there's the possibility of, Trump came out very aggressively saying we need to investigate the Democrats that were in this. So now into the Department of Justice have a new investigation. So they're able to hold back some records, retract, like you were saying, very aggressively because he set up this investigation, because it's evidently the Epstein stuff is no longer a hoax to Trump, that it's something that's worth investigating. But I think the politics of all of this is very interesting, because I think in terms of the politics of who people are voting for in 2026, it's a nothing burger. To your point, what else do people need to know about Donald Trump to know that he's a creep? The people who are still with Trump, I'm not sure there's anything else here.
They know he's a creep and they don't care.
Yeah, I mean, and it was before he was president. Grab him by the genitals, right? I mean, all this different stuff, all the women who've come out who have been assaulted and in other things, people have made the determination that that doesn't matter to them. What matters to them, Rob, is the thing that we saw, and we talked to Heidi Heidkamp about the day after the election. Shit costs too much money. And so people are still going, this Epstein stuff will be a blip. It's disgusting. But I think the people who support Trump have already made their opinion clear. This stuff doesn't matter to them, even if he's a pedophile.
Yeah. And it's not just, it's, some of the revelations about Matt Gaetz. Obviously we've known for a while, we had some more releases of information from that, including, one of his victim, who was an 18-year-old woman, who he paid for sex, apparently at a drug party. It's the fact that a lot of the people when Trump issued, across the board pardons for everybody who participated in January 6th, not just was that repugnant because he removed from them the accountability of having been convicted in a court of law for their actions on January 6th, but a lot of them had ancillary crimes. Some of them were guilty of sex crimes. Some of them were guilty of gun crimes. Now, the president doesn't necessarily pardon them for those crimes, but I mean, the context, like when somebody's going to exercise, a governor or a president is going to exercise that executive authority to pardon somebody or to commute a sentence, their other actions are an important part of that calculation. Trump didn't care. Didn't care. And all these years, all the stuff I saw, Joe Biden putting his hands on people and acting like a creep and everything. I'm not here to defend Joe Biden, although I think some of that was exaggeration and nonsense. If you really care about those things, then hold Donald Trump to the same standard. And I'm tired of Republican women. I thought the way Democrats, for instance, treated Sarah Palin in some ways, some of the things in other conservative Republican women at times, there has been a double standard. And I thought some of that treatment was grotesque. Not that they didn't at times certainly deserve criticism, but some of the ways they were treated and talked about was pretty gross. But then to turn around and to watch Donald Trump call a reporter a piggy, on top of all the other things, ugly things he's on the record saying about women. I mean, if you're a Republican woman, how do you stand with that? How do you say it's okay?
Let me take it a step further than that. One of the things that's really bothering me these days is sort of the Christian right, the folks who are in church every Sunday, the folks who, follow the Bible in order to be mean to people who are LGBTQ, to be, who somehow think this guy is okay because he's on their team, even though admitted adultery, treating immigrants and people very poorly. I mean, he called the reporter a piggy, but he also kept calling another reporter in the White House when he's sitting next to the Prince of Saudi Arabia, kept telling her she was a terrible person and she's a terrible reporter and she's a terrible person. Maybe he should turn to his right and figure out who the terrible people are in that room. I mean,
Well,
that whole press conference was just offensive.
The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who U.S. intelligence says executed a reporter,
Right.
and now he's welcomed at the White House as a friend, and the Trump administration has all sorts of the Trump family has all sorts of financial ties and business dealings with the Saudis. It's grotesque. Look at the crypto guy that he I mean, the crypto guy was convicted. His company, I mean, there are emails where his company was making jokes about what good partners they were with drug traffickers and sex traffickers. I mean, they were making jokes about it. They knew full well that their company, that they were ignoring U.S. laws, that were attempting to impose some accountability on these financial markets. They were ignoring those laws, and they knew they were ignoring those laws, and they knew that that was allowing some pretty heinous criminals to use their service, and they were profiting for it, and they were convicted, and then the president pardoned him, and not only did the president pardon him, but he's in business with him.
Like we could fill up 48 hours of things that this president gets away with his base, that they lose their mind over if anybody else does it.
Right.
Like it is a whole, like, just, but I do think the last election a month ago, or 2 weeks ago, if people see Trump's numbers continuing to go down, and if they start, I mean, I saw some estimate House Dems picking up 70 seats. People are going to start looking out for themselves at some point politically. Up to this point, the safest political move was to be on the Trump side of things. These folks are by and large self-serving. I think once they see that things are going in the wrong direction, they'll start to jump ship. They'll start to actually look at those things that we're just talking about. I think Christian conservatives will start to maybe look at him a little bit differently if his poll numbers are going down. And when I say Christian conservatives, I mean in Congress, the people who sort of wear that as a badge of honor. But I think things may change because I also think he's a lame duck at this point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene's revolt has been extraordinary. I still don't much like her. It's hard for me to look past a lot of the things she said and done in the past. But I mean, there's some virtue, I think, at least in being her own person. And the things she's saying, that she serves the people of her congressional district and not Donald Trump, is a refreshing thing. Even if I disagree with every other thing that she's doing.
But what triggered it wrong?
That expression of priorities is refreshing to hear from a Republican right now.
Well, why now? Right? Why now? That's what I can't wrap my head around with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, she was lockstep, was just as volatile and just as aggressive as Trump has been. And then it changed. Like, what changed? And I don't know the answer to that. I'm glad it changed. I don't know. Right? I mean, you and I've talked a lot about it.
Maybe it's opportunism. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's healthy. I think it's a healthy thing. I would like to see more Republicans standing up to the president. I'd like to see more Republicans standing up for Congress as an institution, as a check on the executive branch. Like maybe we shouldn't be going to war with Venezuela. Maybe that's something Congress declares war, but yet our Secretary of War now, which, by the way, all the libertarians who voted for Donald Trump because he was going to end foreign wars, he was a man of peace. And not only is it the Department of War now, it's the Department of Defense, but we are just unilaterally missile striking boats in the ocean and everything else. It's a remarkable thing to watch. Hey, speaking of elections, Alex Balazs, I broke the news that he apparently is going to take another whack at running for Congress. So that House race is going to be contested. It was certainly contested last cycle. Now, granted, that was an open seat. You had 5 Republican candidates. Julie Fedorchuk ended up walking away with it. She got almost 50% of the vote in a 5-way race. That's a landslide. Had no problems on the statewide ballot. But Balazs is going to run again, and I don't think he's going to be the last candidate on the Republican side to come out.
So I don't see a path for Balazs, but I will tell you, I think there's a lot of folks, moderate and maybe even left of center, who voted in that primary for Julie Fedorchak because her name was not Rick Becker. Those people ain't voting for Julie Fedorchak this time. Those people might be looking for an alternative.
Yeah, I don't think that alternative is necessarily Alex Balazs.
Well, whoever it is, right? And so I think it's interesting sort of thinking about that last election and thinking that Fedorchak is sort of a worker bee and that she's going to go to Washington and do the heavy lifting and all that kind of stuff. I've been disappointed that it's been just sort of lockstep with the president and the majority. And
that is a criticism Balazs made to me, was that he was like, now Balazs also says he supports Trump. So
right.
But I mean, it's kind of a weird line weird tightrope to walk.
I would say nearly impossible, Rob, to say you have to do things not in lockstep with Trump, but I support the guy. So it's politically difficult. Julie's going to win.
I think I don't sense that there's as much dissatisfaction with her as you do, particularly among, I don't know what you'd want to call them, moderate or normie voters.
There's not enough of them.
I think part of the problem too is a lot of them look at the situation and are kind of like, well, what else do you do?
Yeah, no, that's fair.
What else do you do? And then the thing is the other candidates we get, I think, are unlikely to be. I think Rick Becker is going to get it. You're hearing it here. I think Rick Becker is going to get in this race again.
Really?
I think so. I think he's going to end up running again. There's some things, some anecdotes and some things that are just, and I don't really want to talk about them because I don't want to.
Well, that's fine, but I don't like. Again, I may not like that Julie Fedorchak has been lockstep with Trump, but I think the people who vote in a Republican primary don't hate that, and so I think there may be a few people who regret their vote for Julie Fedorchak, but not a lot.
I don't think, to the extent that there is any dissatisfaction with Julie Fedorchak, I don't think it's among the sort of people that are going to turn around and be willing to vote for a person like Rick Becker or a person like, a lot of what I'm hearing is that the current leadership of the North Dakota Republican Party doesn't like a lot of our statewide elected officials and are working on recruiting, some of their own candidates that they're going to get through and get the endorsement at the convention. And I think the likely outcome of that is all of those candidates will have the convention endorsement and then end up getting slaughtered in the primary. I think is. Yeah,
I remember last time when Balazs got the endorsement. We don't have a Congressman Balazs. Who's the guy who beat Baszler at the convention?
Oh my! I don't even remember. Bartlett. Yeah, Jim Bartlett.
Yeah, he took a distant third in the primary
behind Jason Heitkamp.
Yeah, and I would
Although in Heitkamp's defense, I think there are a lot of people voting for Heitkamp because that's a nonpartisan ballot, and people.
I will remember what Kelly Armstrong said when they censured him. If they do as much to take me out as they did to help me win, I'm going to be just fine.
All right, we got to wrap this up. Hey, remember, you can leave us a voicemail or send us a text, 701-587-3141. Follow us on all the social media things at Plain Talk ND. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, X. Our YouTube channel, by the way, is really becoming kind of a cool place. We have, clips and highlights. We have some bonus content there. Be sure to check that out. Hey, coming up on Friday's show, Brent Sanford, Chancellor of the North Dakota University System. He's going to be on. He's going to be talking with about the ND issue. We got multiple vacancies in the system. Big one at North Dakota State University with David Cook moving on, which I was a little sad to see. I thought Cook was a good president, but I also don't blame him for wanting to go home to Iowa. So anyway, he's going to be coming up on Friday. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk again. That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host, Chad Oban, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening.
what the hell is going on with Plain Talk?